So today we're continuing on with our NHL offseason review series where we take a look at teams' trades, free agent signings, who's left the organization, do they have any unfinished business, and are they a better team going into next year? We're going to continue our review of the Atlantic Division and look at the Ottawa Senators, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, we're still on the road here. We're doing another indoor video because it's a little bit late, a little bit dark, but hopefully in the next couple days we'll get some more outdoor videos or some at least more scenic views here for you as we continue to shoot here on location during vacation time. So hope everybody's having a great summer. Hope the weather's great where you are. Let's dive in to the Sens now. They've had a fairly quiet offseason after a decent start here, but what were their objectives? This is the main thing we want to look at. Is what are the objectives? Did they meet them? And how did they go about doing so? So objectives for Ottawa going into the offseason were a couple of things. For one, they were looking to possibly address the center position. So we're looking at maybe adding a veteran guy to take the pressure off guys like Norris and Pinto. Pinto came in late in the season, but certainly could use just an insulator, I guess you could say, and then that takes the pressure off him from having to necessarily be the 2C. So that's a possibility. We also want to maybe see them add on the blue line, likely a partner for Shabbat, possibly just somebody, a right shot, top 4D to kind of stabilize things back there. So that's certainly another area. And of course, they certainly need to look at their coach and their GM too, because both were entering the final year of their deal. This team and organization needs stability, and extending both to me makes sense. Now they got part of that done, which we'll talk about here momentarily. So those are the main objectives. Of course, like everybody else, they're preparing for the NHL draft and the expansion draft here, which we'll talk about. So let's take a look at who they've lost in the organization between trades, as well as expansion draft, and anybody who's left via free agency. Now, when it came to expansion draft, the Kraken took young goalie Joey Daccord. That's certainly a bit of a loss, but thankfully for Ottawa, it's a position that they have a lot of depth at right now. They had a lot of good young goaltending options. Not all were able to be protected or were exempt. They even exposed Matt Murray and Anton Forsberg, protected Philip Gustafsson, but Daccord was the guy to go. It was a good selection by Seattle, and he'll probably get more of an opportunity. But, as much as it is a loss and it does hurt a bit, they still have Gustafsson as well as guys like Mads Sogard, Kevin Mandolese as far as young goalies in the organization. And then, of course, they're hoping Matt Murray will, still live up to that contract here. It's the hopes. Forsberg's only there on a short-term basis to push the younger goalies and, also be an extra guy with a little bit of experience around. So, obviously, that's what we saw there. When it came to the NHL draft, they were picking number 10 overall. There were some, some rumors they might drop back. They ended up taking, for the U.S. team, a national development team, Tyler Boucher, which was kind of viewed upon as not being a great pick by a lot of people. But to be honest, there was a lot of intel to be shared that he was going to be selected in the next couple of picks. So even if they did drop back, there was no guarantee they were going to get him. If you follow this team, you know that they have like this, they're madly in love with players from that program and the U.S. National Team Development Program, like all their top, or most of, shouldn't say all, but like they've had so many high picks from that program, and they're, for the most part, have largely worked out. I mean, you've got Kachuk, you've got Norris, you've got White. They've got, even though Logan Brown didn't work out, they picked him from that program too. Like, they have a lot of young American born players, whether they go through the U.S. national team or if they're more so in the college. They look at Pinto, Sanderson, Clevin. Like, this team is loaded, and the bulk of their new players are mostly U.S. born players. Like, there's a lot of good hockey players coming from that region, so not a big shock. And this is like a Mack truck out there. He runs everybody over, hits everything in sight, can chip in offensively, and you know what? He would be a good fit. Even if he ends up being a third-line player, they also went into this draft feeling like they had stockpiled enough prospects that they didn't necessarily have to take the approach of best player available or even by position, that they could kind of do some unique picks to kind of round out their player roster here that they feel they're going to need in a few years. And I think he would be a big hit amongst guys like Brady Tkachuk and others. So to me, is a good pick. Now, as far as free agents leaving the team, they had a few that they weren't planning on bringing back anyway. They didn't really lose anybody that they wanted to keep. Like, they lost Derek Stepan, who's gone. They brought Artem Anisimov in a couple years ago. He's now gone. He was a free agent. Stepan just went to Carolina, and Anisimov is yet to sign anywheres. So they're both gone. And of course, they traded Evgeny Dadonov, who they brought in last year as a free agent from Florida. Didn't really work out, but it was a tough year for him as well. Like I said, it's a tough adjustment. With all the COVID stuff, it's hard on a lot of people, and he didn't work out. So they were able to get him off the floor without holding back any salary. They got a veteran defenseman, Nick Holden, back, who can be, I don't think he'll have a huge role, but still, he can be a stabilizing guy back there in a pick. So the fact that they can move the contract was beneficial in itself, regardless of what the return was going to be. Now, there wasn't a huge, turnover going out, but that's a decent amount of vets. But at the same time, that's why they wanted to bring in a higher quality veteran center iceman, is with those guys going out. As much as they don't need guys like that, they need somebody else to play the same kind of role. Now, they did have a few other players leave as well, including some youngsters that are going to be playing overseas. Now, they're not necessarily losing these guys permanently, but Ollie Alsing and Vitaly Abramov are both going to be playing overseas. And Dzingel ended up going to the Coyotes. I mean, he came back, played well in the beginning, and then just fell to the fourth line and didn't really fit anymore. It didn't make sense to return him back to this group. So he's moved on here yet again. So those are your departures for this team. Now, as far as what they've done for new contracts, well, they've re-signed a few players. They got a deal done with Victor Mete just as of today, 1 year, $1.2 million. They've settled, so a deal won't go to arbitration. That's a pretty fair deal, I think. 1 year for him to continue to prove himself and see where he fits in this lineup. And of course, they got Artem Zub, who they brought over as a free agent the year before, as his first year in Ottawa. Played well. As the year went on, he got better and can be a top four right shot defenseman to stabilize things. Could be a partner for Shabbat, or he could play in the second pair. Either way, no matter who he plays with, he settles things down and makes them a little bit better and more comfortable out there. So he's a good player to have. And they get him on a short-term deal too, which was a pretty fair contract. Otherwise, they haven't really done a lot. They signed veteran defenseman Michael Del Zotto on a 2-year deal, which was a little bit surprising. Not completely shocked they brought him in, but I'm surprised they gave him the second year. That, to me, was the part that I found a little bit shocking. And then they brought in a couple of youngsters who can probably play for their AHL team, but maybe even compete for a spot, or at least push the other prospects a little bit, because they do have some experience. And that's Pontus Aberg, who's returning from Europe, and then Cole Sherwood, formerly of Columbus Blue Jackets organization. So they didn't really do a ton. Now, does this team still have unfinished business? And the answer is absolutely they do, and they actually have a lot of it. Now, as far as Pierre Dorion goes, he's still going into this final year of his contract, which you don't really want to see. To me, like I said, I think you can criticize some of his trades, but you can do that about any GM. I think for the most part, he's done a relatively decent job with this rebuild, and they should extend him for a couple more years. This team needs stability. There's a lot of questions about the hiring of Pierre Maguire, who came in as director of player personnel. He's always been wanting to get back to be a league executive for a long time, and obviously ran his course with NBC. And then, of course, once they lost the broadcast rights in the U.S., he had an opportunity, and Ottawa hired him to be that role. Now, someone wondered, is he going to be the next GM? Well, maybe, but there's no jumping to conclusions here. To me, I think they stick with Pierre for a little while. Dorian, that is. They did extend DJ Smith, give him a 2-year extension, so he's got 1 more year plus the 2 years, so that's a 3-year deal. To me, he's still the coach for this team. Makes sense to keep on going with him. The players seem to really like him, and they've had some good improvements, so you might as well stick there. Like I said, just have some consistency. This team has had nothing but turnover in various positions, including coach and players, for the last 3 to 4 years. It's not time to do that now. So that was good to see that. But, of course, like I said, do they have more business to take care of? They do. And they have a fair bit of it. They have their RFAs, like the big RFAs. So Brady Tkachuk needs to be signed. Drake Batherson needs to be signed. Philip Gustafson needs to be signed. Now, it's fact that they're not signed is not alarming. For starters, they're not arbitration eligible. The only one that was Mete, and that's done ahead of time. But you got to remember, with the shortened off season, a lot of the teams right now are just getting the RFA stuff because they went through expansion draft, and they went through the entry draft, and then they went through free agency. And of course, RFAs are not as urgent because they hold their rights as long as they issue the qualifying offer. So all that was done, and now it's time to look after them contractually and get deals on the book. So when it comes to Brady Tkachuk, like I said, in my opinion, they'd like to do a long-term deal, slap the C in his chest and call it a day. It's not going to be that simple. Same with Batherson, but I'm optimistic they get a long-term deal done, but I don't think the players really, if they're smart, financially good agents, they probably won't go for that. I think it's in their better interest to do a 2 or 3 year bridge deal and then extend out because league revenue should be better. The cap will hopefully rise at least a little bit, and they can get a better deal. But the Ottawa's in a situation with their cap that they could afford to do it now because they can see a longer projection of where things are at because they don't have a lot of long-term deals on the books. So that would be easier, but I'm just not entirely sure that the players will want to. But if the team can get that done, that would be huge because it gives them a lot more cost certainty on these players who will be big parts of their future. When it comes to Gustafsson, on the other hand, I'd probably want to go shorter term with him because he only had a limited amount of time in the NHL at the end of the year. He played very well, mind you. Could be a potential goalie of the future candidate, but you'd want to see more first. So probably a 1 or 2 year deal for him makes the most sense in that regard. So they do have a lot left there to do, and what's left is fairly significant. So we'll see what happens. I know to me it's time to name a captain for this team. They've been out without one since Carlson left. It's been a while. It's definitely going to be between Chabot and Tkachuk as your real only 2 viable options. And to me, as much as I like Thomas Chabot, I think Brady is the more natural leader. He drags the team into the fight on the ice, and it really it's just an all-around. It just comes so natural for him. It's in his blood. His father was a great leader, and it just, he just gets it. He knows how to be a pro at a young age. He's been around this game his whole life, and to me, it's just a natural-born leader. So that's what I would do, and I would think that that's likely what they're leaning towards, but it's just a matter of time before they get that done here. And there was reports that Eugene Melnyk didn't want to give him the captaincy unless he signs long-term, but I've seen more reports lately saying that he's eased up on that, and that regardless of what term he signs for, that it's quite likely that he's getting the C on his jersey when we roll around to the 21-22 season. As far as the other objectives go, when it comes to the unfinished business here, they haven't really addressed the center position yet, and they have addressed the blue line issue. I'm just not entirely convinced they brought in the right player. I mean, like I said, Delzato and Holden are fine, but I guess in a way, the fact that they're only bringing in shorter-term solutions is probably wise because they do have a lot of confidence that they have the young guys like Jake Sanderson. So Sanderson's going to play a year of college hockey at UND, so obviously that's huge for him. And they have Jacob Bernard-Docker, who just signed at the end of last season and is going to be playing his first full season. Those 2 guys will be legitimate factors in their top 4D in the not-too-distant future. You've already got Chabot as a mainstay there. You've got Branson Ramete still trying to get one of those roles. You've still got Zub and Zaitsev. Ultimately, I don't think they really need to go shopping for, a veteran top 4D. They can go with the younger guys and build around them here with short-term veteran solutions. As far as the centermen go, I'd be totally fine with them bringing in somebody who's capable of playing a 2C role as long as it's on a limited basis, like a short-term deal. So, I know they've looked at guys like Monahan and Ryan Strome. Those would be fine because they're not too long of contracts. But at the same time, they need to give the kids more opportunity like they did last year. They're growing to these roles and be a big part of the future. So will this team be better? Will they be worse or about the same as last year compared going into this next season? To me, they can only go up from here. In the second half of the year, they already showed that they were better than the first half. I think they can carry on that. I know you don't really get momentum from season to season, but to me, this team made a lot of gains, a lot of growth. And they can continue on with that with the small additions that they've made here. And I think I can't say for certain they're going to be a playoff team going into a tough Atlantic division this year, but I think they will be in a position where they can at least be in the conversation and fight for a spot, which is something more than we can say in the last couple of years. So they're certainly trending in the right direction. It will be a team that will not be taken lightly in the Atlantic division, and we'll kind of go from there. So I think they're definitely better. Are they a playoff team? Maybe, but when you get teams like Tampa, Florida, Toronto, Montreal, Boston in there, it's not going to be easy. You're looking at about 4 out of 6 teams that can make it, and it's going to be tough. But we'll see what the kids can do, and as long as progress is made, I think overall everyone in the organization will be happy as they continue to push here and hopefully continue to get better. So let me know your thoughts on the Sens offseason. Have you liked what they've done? What do you think about their unfinished business? Can it take care of this? Do you see the RFAs getting long-term deals, short-term deals, and do you see any additional moves happening before training camp rolls around? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analyzing all 32 NHL teams from around the entire league. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.